This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is John Lauder, host of The Cheap Seats here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, The Cheap Seats, where we talk about sports from the fans' perspective. A new show comes out every Monday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of The Cheap Seats. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Your Soccer Passport, World Cup edition here on Public House Media. Second episode this week as we try to knock out some more coverage of the biggest sporting event in the world right now. I'm Brice. That's Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Ivan, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very hot. We got a heat wave here in Oregon, but I'm doing well. The games have been pretty good, and I think as the tournament's rolled on, we've started to learn a little bit more about some of the teams.
I think that's a really good aspect. For the games that have happened since the last time that we spoke, Nigeria beat South Korea 2-0. Germany won a very close one with Spain 1-0. France won 2-1. Australia came from behind to win 3-2 against the Brazilians, and China, at time of recording, just defeated South Africa 1-0. Let's start off with one of the things that let's start off with actually the best game out of the group. We'll say Australia and Brazil, because Australia, the Matildas, had to come back 2-0 to win this one, including a lot of controversy in the game-winning goal with the VAR. Ultimately, it was just it was very difficult because there was a lot of extra things that took away from what was probably the best game of the tournament so far. In terms of the actual gameplay, it just kind of got muddled down by all the VAR.
Yeah, and the whole point of VAR is to kind of avoid that, and unfortunately, it didn't in the situation. But I think the aspect of the game itself was fascinating because you had Brazil getting off to an early 2-0 lead, and they looked like they were rolling. They were playing with so much confidence. And vice versa, you had Australia, who just came off an upset defeat Italy in their first game, and so now they're down 2-0, and their tournament all of a sudden it looks like it might be on the brink of elimination. And to show that kind of character to fight back from it right before the halftime and to get at least one goal in and build a little momentum, I think it spoke a lot about how Australia, the mental aspect Australia has, and also for Brazil. Once I think I mentioned it with them I feel like once there's pressure on them, they struggle to deliver under that pressure, and I think today you saw that as well, especially after going down with that really controversial game-winning goal that probably should have been called offsides, just because even though the forward didn't touch the ball, her impact influenced the way the two defenders reacted to it, which kind of is also part of the offsides rule.
It was a very liberal definition of not including that forward. I think it was actually Sam Kerr who was that forward and in the offside position. But the thing about that final goal is that it was actually ruled an own goal. And I think that actually has a pretty significant aspect of it in terms of why it was called that way. And when you look at it, even though that the other attacking forward, the one that was offsides, was there, it wasn't actually the intended shot that went in. And it wasn't the intended pass. It was the actual deflection of the defender. And Alves got in the way and put it in the back of her own net, and that was ultimately the game winner. And I would have problems with that if it wasn't an own goal.
Yeah, I think if you're Brazil, you're pissed and you think you got robbed. I think if you're Australia, you find that it's okay. And I think if you're neutral, I think it just kind of depends. Some are going to agree with this, some people won't. So it is that gray area. So if whatever, and that's a great thing about gray areas, especially with these calls, you're going to be able to find the subplot that works for you. But I mean, now it makes the group really interesting, and it really sets up Italy with a great chance when we get to it a little bit later for them to take advantage of the group and playing Jamaica next. But yeah, but it's a good controversy to have, and now you have more discussions. What actually is an offsides? Do we need to rewrite the rule kind of the way handball has been used a lot with these VAR replays too? So now you have something else that VAR has brought up and maybe can fix the game in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect because when you think about VAR in the men's game, it's been such a big hassle. But out of all the controversies that we've seen so far in the Women's World Cup, it's been about celebrating, and it's been about own goals, and it's been about all these other kind of things. It hasn't actually been about the way that the VAR itself is so far, which I think has been really compelling and kind of still shows the big difference between the men's and women's game even at this level. Because I'm going to wait till after the break before we kind of talk again about celebrations and even just the vast firestorm that has continued since our last show about the United States celebration at this point. But I want to ask you about something else so far, because there's actually with this game-winning own goal, it's not the first own goal of the games that we talked about so far since the last time we've spoken and had a show. Nigeria had an own goal from South Korea to really kind of ice that game, as well as Norway we thought was going to be a little bit more competitive in their matchup so far. The only reason why it was a 2-1 game for them against France was because France allowed an own goal. I don't remember there being this many own goals being an impact so far in a World Cup, but we've got 3 out of the last 5 games where an own goal has been involved, and it just seems like it's a little bit higher than usual. Is it just me, or is this kind of a theme that's starting to grow?
No, I think it's been a theme of this World Cup. I believe there was an own goal or two, or an own goal at least in the Norway-Nigeria game in the first round too. I think sometimes these players might be, number one, it's high stakes, a little added pressure, probably a little nervous, and some you're in a higher intensity environment and you're putting a little more pressured situations, which might lead to a little more own goals, and especially if they're not used to playing at this constant level. The one Norway got yesterday, the best defender in the world was the one who scored but that was a perfect example of a ball that was played in a situation where where it was far enough away and going fast enough where the keeper doesn't feel comfortable going out and getting it because she feels she might miss. The defender doesn't know the amount of pressure she might be under if no one's telling her anything. So her idea is just clear it and then refocus and regroup for a corner kick and go from there. And then you just maybe a brain fart leads to it. So that's kind of the way I guess I'm seeing that own goal yesterday from France and Norway. But I mean, if we really want to quickly talk about that too, VAR comes in that game too with a PK in the second half that leads to France's game winner. And a little argumentative about whether it should have been a PK or not. I think it should have, similar to the South Africa-Spain game where, you can't leave your cleats up like that. This one wasn't as harsh, but I think the similar principles kind of led to that review into the PK being called. So you don't agree with me here?
I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, because even though these PKs have been kind of called, and there's also been a decent amount of penalty kicks that have happened too. I feel like every other game's got a penalty kick goal.
Yeah, I think they mentioned in the broadcast that 5 of the 10 VAR reviews have been either overturned or changed, whether it led to a PK or led to a goal or something of that nature. So, I mean, VAR has had some impact in this game, or in the tournament so far with that too.
And it does. But my thing is that with the disparity of some of these teams, has it really had that negative of an effect? Like when we deal with VAR in the men's game, pretty much anybody's got a shot at any given time. That's one of the reasons why the World Cup is so awesome, is that you could get the lucky break that you need, and usually kind of goes away from it. But with VAR, when the teams are a little bit more spaced out, I'm not sure if it has the same kind of impact that it does in the men's game, or in the women's game compared to the men's game, and I just can't put my tongue on it exactly about why it's different. It feels off. Like the discussion that we have about VAR with the women's game isn't the same with the men's.
I think part of it might be just because I felt, at least like if we're going to take the Spain game for example against South Africa, the Spain was already dominating. They were already so on top of South Africa that you felt it was going to be a matter of time before they created a goal and got themselves back into the game. And it just so happened that their goals came from VARs like that. But, I'm not sure what to help you find the words for that. Speechless. I don't think I've ever heard you speechless.
First time for everything, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of focus a little bit real fast though too. That Germany-Spain game, that was probably the most compelling matchup out of them all since our last episode. Germany winning that one with a goal from Sarah Debritz in the 42nd minute, just before the first half ended. This was a pretty evenly match scenario. More shots for Spain, more shots on goal for Germany. Even though the Spaniards almost had had a 2-to-1 ratio in possession, Germany really made every opportunity count in a way that Spain didn't have an answer for. And for Spain, this was a real good opportunity for them to upset the apple cart, and they weren't able to do that even with the star of the German team, Zenver Marzan, injured after the first game. This was an opportunity for Spain to really do some damage, and they failed to get the win, but they still looked all right. For our kind of pet project in Spain, the way that we look at them, what did you take from this game?
Yeah, so I think, number one, it speaks to the experience of a German team where they were the second better team around the first half, but they find a way to take advantage of an opportunity that's created. And at the same time, for vice versa, for Spain, this has to be a learning experience of we can't just have the ball. We have to make better creative opportunities in front of goal to take advantage of them. So I think this was a combination of a team with experience leaning on that and a team lacking that experience, showing their naiveness in a way in these big games. So maybe for Spain they learned that hope later this tournament, but they do have to do a better job of not only keeping the ball, because they do a great job of that, but creating better opportunities in front of goal so you do value, and all that possession does go for something. But I think it's a combination of that, a lack of naiveness of not being in those big time situations against a team of the quality of Germany, and then a Germany team having a lot of quality and knowing and feeling more comfortable in situations like those.
To wrap up those games, it means that Group A and Group B are done with 2 of their games. France is on top of Group A with 2 wins. Norway and Nigeria, which will play each other in the last group stage game, are both 1-1. South Korea 0-2 with a -6 goal differential. Group B, Germany and Spain are at top. China, though, with their 1-0 win against South Africa, also move into a similar situation where Spain and China will play each other. They are both at 1-1 right now in the group. South Africa is 0-0 0-2, but have just a -3 goal differential heading into it. And Group C has been split. Two of those teams, Brazil and Australia, are both sitting at 1-1 right now. Italy and Jamaica will play tomorrow. We'll talk about that game here in a second after the break, as well as some of the other big ones coming up this weekend here on Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition on Public House Media.
This is John Lauder, host of The Cheap Seats here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, The Cheap Seats, where we talk about sports from the fans' perspective. A new show comes out every Monday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of The Cheap Seats. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
And welcome back to Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition here on Public House Media. I'm Brice Burge. You can find me on Twitter at @ThatBriceBurge, Brice with an I. Ivan Sanchez Carrasco here as well. You can find him on Twitter at Ivan Sanchez C90. All right, let's start going into the preview function of the next couple of matches here in Group Stage Match Day 2. Japan and Scotland is probably the big one coming up on the day of broadcast matches. Japan, that just completely boring and useless draw against Argentina, being the only draw of the tournament so far, while Scotland lost a heartfelt matchup against their UK compatriots in England. Also, Jamaica and Italy. Jamaica is going to try to bounce back and see if they can be competitive. Will also be on Friday, as well as England and Argentina. And then Saturday and Sunday will wrap out the rest of the stages. Netherlands and Cameroon, Canada, New Zealand, Sweden, Thailand, and United States and Chile. There may be one good competitive matchup in that listing, but we'll talk about them here in a little bit. I want to talk about this Japanese-Scotland game. And right now, Yahoo has the probability of Japan winning 56% to just 18% for Scotland. It's even worse when you use the Bovada analytics. It's people right now have a big to-do about Japan winning this matchup, even though that they don't look like they could win a game in this tournament right now because of their struggles in this opening matchup. What are you looking for to say, hey, these analytics are going to be true and Japan's going to take the win?
Oh, I think it's going to be a little more open game with Scotland going out for the attack more. They're not going to be as comfortable sitting back the way Argentina are. They're not going to be as physical as Argentina was either, and I think that's going to help play in the Japanese hands. And now there's a lot of pressure on Japan because if you lose this one, you got England ending your group stage, so they need to get a result here. And Scotland, I think, from that England game, they played well. They showed that they weren't really afraid of the stage. And even though they lost, what I want to look for in Scotland is how do they react mentally? Are they able to not be drained out from a defeat to a rival? Can you kind of bounce back and refocus and try to find the positives from that defeat in this game and know that you have a real chance of getting a result here if you're Scotland? And I think you're right. It is the best game tomorrow, but those are the two kind of things I'm looking for, how both of these teams bounce back, especially if it's going to be a more open game than that Argentina-Japan game was. And I think that helps a Japanese team who struggle with more physical teams to begin with.
I look at the Scottish team, and the Scots right now have.
You like them?
I do like them. You know, this is a squad that I think has a lot of opportunities to string some passes together and catch a team on their heels fairly easily. For Japan right now, they've got to have discipline in the back and the availability to go forwards. And you talk about the openness of a game against a squad like Scotland, and that really does pay off for a team like Japan. But my thing is about it is that when they got into the attacking third, Japan, it looked like they didn't have anything to do anyway. And so, and a very little of that had to do with the physicality of Argentina. All of that had to do with Japan not being able to do anything that they wanted to do and be consistently caught on the off foot. They were taking lower quality, lower velocity shots when they actually took them because they were on the wrong foot the entire time, and their timing was just off, just consistently. And for Scotland, a team that can really kind of flop that around, I think it's going to be the opposite scenario for this game for Japan, and there's going to be just more disaster coming up for this Japanese squad, because when I look at Scotland and they can catch you on your heels so easily, then you've got the opportunity to do to their defense exactly what happened to their offense in their last game. Their offense is going to have to strike first, and they're going to have to make this about their game. And if Japan doesn't score in the first 30 minutes, I don't think they score. And they'll be looking to win their second group stage. They've won the last 3 World Cups. They'll be looking to hold off some goals from Scotland to try to get their first consecutive clean sheets at a Women's World Cup. They've never been able to do that before. But I just think that Scotland's got the opportunity to flip the field, but keep the script on this Japanese team. And I don't see the opportunities really kind of being there. I could see this being like a 2-1 come from behind win from Scotland. I could see this being a 3-0 Scottish win if they get out early enough. I don't like Japan's ability right now to find the options to what's being shown them, and it's very disappointing for me to say this because Japan has been that rock solid squad for so long.
I'm gonna give them a little better chance than you. I think I actually wouldn't be surprised if this game ends in a draw. I know that's very anticlimactic, but I think it does present a good chance for both of these teams to get a draw because they could, I think, balance each other out. If the game gets open, then, if it opens up for Japan, that means that there'll naturally be more gaps to attack for Scotland as well, especially if they're going to attack out wide the way they did against England. So I think it could open itself up to a 1-1 or 2-2 draw, actually. But it really does depend on, I think, like you said, for Japan, can they create something? And for Scotland, can they bounce back from their opening game?
World Cup edition will keep on moving along here in the next match day 2 series here. Probably the other compelling matchup in the different groups will be in Group E. Canada versus New Zealand. New Zealand lost a heartbreaker to the Netherlands last game. Canada looked like they were struggling against Cameroon. It's a different style matchup between a team that likes to pick and choose its opportunities in Canada versus probably more defensively sound squad in New Zealand, when this tournament's really been about goal scoring and offensive opportunities. They kind of come into this really oddball scenario. This is a matchup that a type of matchup that we didn't expect going into this tournament. And here it is, pretty prevalent with the teams that are remaining playing each other in match day 2. What do you see in this matchup that will give Canada the opportunity to strike forward and maybe win this group?
I think they got a chance here. Number one, they have one of the best forwards in the world in Sinclair, and they find a great way of playing through her, playing around her, making the focal point. I think her physicality up top is going to frustrate New Zealand, because she does such a good job of playing the ball to the back that I think it'll allow Canada to control the game, and from there they're going to be able to attack more and do what their game plan is moving forward. I think Sinclair is going to be the key here. Can they find her at her feet, which allows for everybody else to move off, and it creates these opportunities, these channels in the back to create chances. And if they do that, and if they're patient, I think that gives them a better chance against a defensively minded New Zealand team.
I like the Kiwis to have a better shot than what people are going to realize, just because I think New Zealand is going to be a team that can kind of flip the script a little bit on Canada too, and maybe get up there a little bit, take some shots on goal. I think they're going to have some high-quality shots. I just don't think it's going to be enough against Canada, because Canada is really going to have the availability to go up there with Sinclair and a host of the other players that they got. They've got a lot of no-name people on this team that play in Europe right now, and it's a solid roster. I really like the Canadians in this matchup, despite what happened before against Cameroon. I think they kind of got their jitters out in that game and now have a little bit more confidence going into things. I'm going to take Canada to win this one outright. Matches both Yahoo and Bovada, both currently sitting at 65% win probability for the Canadians. The draw, though, is a little bit more highly favored in the Yahoo predictions at 23%. It is a New Zealand 23% chance of winning for Bovada in the way that the lines lie. So we'll take, we got about 4 minutes left in this episode, and now that we've kind of previewed the games that matter, let's go back and talk a little bit more about the United States. They got a game against Chile right now. That's going to be their second game matchup. And so far, the storyline about the United States hasn't been anything about their goaltending or their defense. It's about whether or not you celebrate after your 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th goal. Not the fact that they scored 13 goals, but the fact that they celebrated after them.
Yes, I would think that's the issue more. It's not the goal scoring, it's the goal celebrating. I think that's been the bigger issue.
Has your opinion on this changed since last episode? I mean, other public house media guys have been talking about it on Press Row and cheap seats and stuff like that. We've seen it with different teams that have been kind of commenting on it and moving forward along those lines. And I even posted something on my personal Facebook page and got some really interesting results coming from Division I hockey announcers and sports journalists from around the country kind of commenting on that. And it's been a very mixed bag so far about whether or not they should have been celebrating and what that means to each group. For me, I see those celebrations as stoppage time that's not getting put on the clock because of the goal differential. And this is the only way that you're going to slow down the United States offense, is by letting them goof around and be silly and build up their team chemistry a little bit. Because Thailand wasn't doing it. Their defense wasn't doing it. So, I mean, it's a little frustrating to see the results both ways, but there's, American exceptionalism, wholly in play here. And it's really been surprising that this is still the top story for the United States right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting aspects have been the fact that some former players agree, some former players disagree with the celebration. I mean, it's not cut and dry. And I guess it took me a little more time to process what actually transpired and about it, because we recorded right after it happened. I get it. I can see, number one, you're already the favorites. You do have a chip on your shoulder. You do have like a target on your back. You don't need to give any other team more of a reason to want to beat you, or to kind of have this, what is kind of stereotyped as American arrogance in a tournament. I don't think I can. That's how I can see it can kind of come off, and that's how I felt. It kind of came off. It's that a little kind of American arrogance, which, is a way. Now you have the whole you're in such small quarters there in France, anyways, and everything is so concentrated that there can be kind of this build up of these are the bad girls of the tournament, which can help the team refocus, be like, yeah, we are, and they can just ride it through, and it's not a problem for them unless they lose. and then that's when all of this kind of can manifest itself into something that everybody else cheers for them to have if this happens. So it'll be interesting to see, because I think they're going to blow out Chile as well. What happens again with if once the goals start coming in?
I would almost like them to see no celebration to the point of like Cleveland Browns avoiding penalty level aspects. Like deadpan, no celebration, so far the other way that it's actually a celebration in itself. Because I really like the fact that they did celebrate and they took more time off the clock. I do think Sweden's going to drop 6 on Thailand at the very least. But it's awkward because I think the big storyline for me right now is that we're no longer talking about the goaltenders. We're no longer talking about the defense, which was the big storyline going into this tournament. You couldn't get out from the shadow of Hope Solo fast enough or at all for this squad, and it's exceptionally difficult now when you think about it all. For these players to try to react to all that, and now here comes a different storyline that I think is going to be better for them.
Actually, I think that's worse, just because Thailand was so terrible. Like, you knew they weren't going to be challenged by what is considered the weak parts of the team, and I don't think this isn't going to change that as the tournament moves on and the teams get harder and harder. If anything, this is just another distraction to a team who's trying to do so much goodwill outside the field, and this is to entering this World Cup, and this is something, and on the off the field issue too. This has become kind of an off the field issue, but I mean that's kind of been my opinion, and I don't think it's kind of swayed or changed recently. Is that it comes off a little more of just American arrogance and the way it can be perceived around the world. But if the team doesn't have a problem with it, and it doesn't seem like they do, and it looks like they're carrying that chip with them on their shoulder and really leaning into it, I mean, more power to them.
And we see similar aspects in it in other sports. I mean, the dog masks that the Philadelphia Eagles had last year going into the playoffs, that because they were always the underdogs, even though they were at home in the highest seed. And we've seen it with the Patriots over the years. And it's just, my thing is that sometimes you got to be the bad guy. And A.J. Pierzynski is a retired baseball player. He's a catcher for the White Sox, as well as a host of other teams near the end of his career. But that guy purposely was the villain whenever the storyline dictated. He was the last natural heel in baseball, in my opinion, because he would take a storyline and flip it if it benefited his teammates. And with all the talk that's going in, and you read the comments about how many Americans aren't supporting the Americans before this tournament started, and the drama and off the field issues that were already there, this is a whole brand new story that the United States can almost hide behind and focus on themselves and kind of rewrite a whole story. It's amazing how many positives you can get when you're the one with the pen in your hand. And that's something that I didn't think the United States had before they entered into this tournament. All the stories that were being written about them, they had very little control over, despite their best efforts to get around that. And this is different now.
Yeah, and the good thing they're also going to have for themselves, that the soccer media, American soccer media that's covering them in France, is going to be very protective of them as well. And they have been very protective of them as well. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying I felt that it's been very protective of them. It's what's everyone else kind of around the world, it kind of seems this the biggest issue came from this. So, for them, I think it'll be fine. I don't think they're gonna, if they lose a game, it won't be because of this. It would just give teams another reason to, bulletin board material, as we like to say. So, yeah, I mean, those have been my opinions on it. It'll be interesting to see if they continue with this, especially because it looks like there's a good possibility that it's them and France in the quarterfinals. And France have been probably the second best team so far, and they've been really enjoyable to watch. And if you have the host nation already, with everything that comes with being a host nation, playing a team that's now considered like the bad girls of the tournament, it makes a really interesting build up to it, and really great, and makes for a fascinating match too.
Before we end this, do you have any other commentary on things so far?
World Cup wise, I think it's been a great tournament. I've been a little disappointed with some teams who have the ball and create good chances, but they're not making it. China today kind of was like that. Spain, I thought, as well. But for the most part, I think the tournament's been really great, and I've really enjoyed. I think the team I've enjoyed watching the most has been France so far, because I like the players on their team. I like, they've just been a joy to watch, and they're freaking fantastic.
That they are. I've been really impressed with France, and it is kind of a bummer to see, the destined path between these two squads be just in the quarterfinals. That is ultimately a big issue, but that's something that always really kind of happens when you get a group or a World Cup with only 6 groups. There's going to be awkward lineups in quarterfinal matches that are almost better than the final. So we'll see how it goes. But man, that French squad is legit, and they are doing the host nation title very well, which is something that Canada didn't do last time around. So hopefully that will be something that will continue here, as we will continue with 2 episodes a week on Wednesdays and Fridays coming up here for Your Soccer Passport through the end of the World Cup. So until next time, wait, Ivan, do you have a shout out?
St. Louis Blues. They won the Stanley Cup last night. It was fun watching them beat a Boston team. So go Blues, first Stanley Cup for them.
Absolutely. The Blues definitely deserved it. They did a great job. Maybe we'll do a hockey podcast here one of these times. But until next time, I'm Brice Burge. He's Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. You've listened to Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition on Public House Media.